What if everything you believed about your family turned out to be a mystery waiting to unfold? Patty Duke, once known as America's sweetheart, was the vibrant young actress who lit up TV screens in The Patty Duke Show and stunned audiences with her Oscar-winning talent. But behind the scenes, her life was filled with emotional turmoil, intense romances, and deep personal battles. She was bold, unpredictable, and profoundly troubled. At the heart of her story was a baby boy, born into chaos, raised with love, and burdened by one haunting question. For years, her son, Sean Astin, lived in the shadow of a tangled paternity mystery, one so confusing that even Patty wasn't sure of the answer. Was his father the young Hollywood boyfriend, the short-lived husband, or the man who raised him as his own? It took decades, 3 possible fathers, and a shocking DNA test to finally reveal the truth, and the answer surprised everyone. To truly understand why this story stands as one of Hollywood's most complex dramas, you need to know who Patty Duke really was. Her story doesn't begin with her son, Sean Astin. It begins with a teenage girl who grew up under the spotlight, lived an extraordinary life, and left behind a legacy that was both inspiring and chaotic. Patty Duke became a star at just 8 years old and, by her early teens, was already considered one of the brightest young talents in the industry. Her breakthrough came in 1962 when she portrayed Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker, earning her an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress at the age of 16, making her the youngest winner in that category at the time. While her peers were worrying about school, Patty was accepting Oscars. Her success continued with The Patty Duke Show, where she played the dual role of identical cousins Patty and Kathy Lane. The show was a major hit and made her a household name. But beneath all the glitz and popularity, her real life was far from glamorous. Behind closed doors, Patty was silently struggling. Her managers, who controlled her life from a young age, pushed her relentlessly and exploited her. She later revealed that they had treated her inappropriately, but nothing was done to protect her. Back then, she had no voice, and no one stood up for her. As she grew older, the emotional damage became more visible. Patty experienced severe mood swings, unpredictable behavior, and emotional highs and lows that confused those around her. It wasn't until much later that she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a condition she openly discussed later in life, becoming an advocate for mental health awareness. But during the 60s and 70s, her struggles were misunderstood. Her love life was equally chaotic, marked by impulsive relationships that often began during manic episodes and quickly spiraled into heartbreak. By her early 20s, she had already gone through multiple failed relationships and marriages, some lasting only days. Unfortunately, one of those unstable periods led to the greatest mystery of her life, the question of her child's paternity. In 1971, Patty gave birth to a baby boy. What should have been a joyful moment turned into a media frenzy, because even Patty wasn't sure who the father was. She had been romantically involved with several men during that time, and due to her mental health struggles, the timeline of events was unclear. Her emotional state was fragile, her memory unreliable, and the relationships overlapping. She was briefly married to one man, emotionally connected to another, and seeing a third. When baby Sean was born, 3 men could have been the father. Despite her uncertainty, Patty publicly claimed to know who the father was. The tabloids jumped on the story, speculating and spreading rumors. But this wasn't just celebrity gossip, it carried heavy emotional consequences. Patty wasn't creating drama for attention, she genuinely believed what she was saying. She was a woman battling mental illness, confusion, and heartbreak, trying to give her son answers she wasn't even sure of herself. As Sean grew up, he too began to question the story he had been told. Born on February 25, 1971, Sean Patrick Astin would go on to become a respected actor, a devoted family man, and unknowingly the center of one of Hollywood's most perplexing paternity sagas. You may first remember him as Mikey in the Goonies. Even as a child, he stood out. Unlike many young actors who fade from the spotlight, Sean managed to build a steady career without burning out. That alone is rare in Hollywood. His biggest breakthrough came when he portrayed Samwise Gamgee in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. While the spotlight initially focused on Elijah Wood, Viggo Mortensen, and Ian McKellen, it was Sean's quiet, heartfelt performance as Sam that truly resonated with audiences and earned him lasting recognition. Despite his fame, Sean stayed grounded. He avoided scandal, steered clear of the tabloid scene, and chose a life focused on family and meaningful work. Even his Oscar nomination in 1995, for directing and co-producing the short film Kangaroo Court, went largely unnoticed by the public. Years later, he reappeared in Stranger Things and once again won fans over. All the while, few people realized that beneath his calm, successful image, Sean had spent most of his life burdened by unanswered questions about his identity. Eventually, he decided to find out the truth for himself. From the moment Sean was born, his paternity was shrouded in doubt. Not even Patty could say for sure who his real father was. Still, when he arrived, she had to give an answer, whether she was confident in it or not. Among the three men she was involved with, the least expected and most curious was Michael Tell. A writer and music promoter, Tell wasn't widely known. He entered Patty's life in 1970 during a particularly volatile time and had briefly been subletting her apartment. Patty Duke and Michael Tell had a brief fling that wasn't a real relationship or even a true friendship. Then, unexpectedly, Patty became pregnant. Worried about gossip and scandal, she made a hasty decision to marry Michael. Their wedding was a quiet civil ceremony, simple, rushed, and done mostly to protect her public image. But the marriage didn't last. Just 13 days later, Patty had it annulled, later insisting that it was never about love or serious commitment, just a way to cover things up. For years afterward, she denied that Michael could be the father of her child, even claiming their marriage was never consummated. To her, Michael was just a name on paper, a mistake she erased almost as soon as it happened. Yet years later, that name would return in the most unexpected way. After Michael, Patty became involved with Desi Arnaz Jr., the son of TV legends Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz Sr. He was young, famous, and part of Hollywood royalty, a musician, actor, and teen heartthrob. When he and Patty got together, the media took notice, and their relationship became a scandal. The age gap and her fragile emotional state made their romance especially controversial. Some reports even claimed Lucille Ball tried to end the relationship, not wanting her son involved in something she saw as unstable. But Patty believed Desi was the one, and for years she told her son, Sean, that Desi was his biological father. The timeline seemed to fit, and while Desi never confirmed the claim, he didn't publicly deny it either. He stayed quiet, avoiding drama. So for much of Sean's early life, he believed his mother was a star and his father was the son of Lucy and Desi. That was his truth, until everything changed. Then came John Astin, known for his iconic role as Gomez Addams. Patty married John in the mid-1970s, and together they raised Sean. John legally adopted him, giving him the last name Astin. To the public and to Sean himself, John was his father. He and Patty had another son, Mackenzie Astin, who also became an actor. For years, their family seemed loving and stable. After a rough start in life, Patty appeared to find peace. John was supportive and steady, and Sean loved him deeply. He grew up believing John Astin was not just his emotional father but his biological one, too. That belief held for years, until questions began to surface. Over time, Patty's story began to shift. First, she told Sean that John Astin was his father. Later, she said it was Desi Arnaz Jr. and then sometimes she vaguely suggested someone else. To outsiders, this seemed like avoidance, but those close to her knew that wasn't the case. Patty wasn't being dishonest, she was genuinely confused. Her bipolar disorder often clouded her memory and sense of time, especially during the chaos of those years. Not knowing who fathered her son weighed heavily on her. She loved Sean, but she couldn't give him the clarity he desperately wanted. For Sean, it was deeply painful. He loved his mother, looked up to John Astin, and was curious about Desi Arnaz Jr. but all the uncertainty eventually took its toll. When he later met a relative of Michael Tell who hinted they were related, the mystery only deepened. As the questions grew louder, Sean made a life-changing choice. He decided to take a DNA test. This wasn't about resentment, but about finding peace and truth. He reached out to the three men involved, Sean Astin, Sean Astin Jr., and Michael Tell, who had long been out of the picture. Despite the complexity of their histories, each man agreed to participate. Then came the wait. Time dragged on, and Sean wrestled with what the results might reveal. Would they confirm something he wasn't ready to accept? Would they upend everything he thought he knew? Finally, the results arrived. When Sean opened the report, the truth was there in black and white, and Michael Tell was his biological father, the man his mother had married for less than 2 weeks and had long insisted wasn't connected to him. It was a powerful moment. Not heartbreaking, but grounding. Sean didn't respond with anger. In fact, he felt free. In an interview with People magazine, he shared, "If you want to know who I am, Sean Astin is my father, and Michael Tell is my biological father." The discovery didn't change his love for John, it only deepened it. He now understood that while DNA connects people biologically, love is what truly makes a family. With the truth finally known, Sean could begin a new chapter, with a clearer sense of identity, not only as a son but also as a man, a father, and someone in charge of telling his own story. But this new truth brought new challenges. Sean now had to build a relationship with a man who had never been part of his life. Reaching out to Michael Tell took courage, but their meeting wasn't filled with drama. It was thoughtful, respectful, and offered a sense of closure. Michael, though a private person, welcomed Sean without hesitation. He didn't deny the test results or try to avoid the situation. Instead, he embraced it with humility and grace. Michael wasn't a Hollywood star or media figure, he worked quietly behind the scenes in music promotion. And yet, he stepped into this new role with surprising openness and kindness. The spotlight that came with the truth was a striking contrast to the glamorous world Sean Astin had always known in Hollywood. But as he got to know Michael, he began to recognize parts of himself that had previously been confusing. Sean has never spoken ill of Michael. In fact, he's described the process of discovering his biological father as one filled with peace and compassion, not bitterness. In one interview, he said, "I have a good relationship with Mike. That's who I am. I don't fault anybody. I don't fault myself or Desi, who is like my godfather. I have such a powerful love bond with this man. He's a gorgeous human being." Michael, for his part, never tried to overwrite the past. He didn't try to replace the existing relationships Sean had with Sean Astin or Sean Astin Jr. Instead, he stepped into the role of the missing piece, letting everything evolve naturally. For Sean, the effect was profound and transformative. Learning the truth didn't diminish the love he felt for Sean Astin, nor did it weaken the connection with Patty Duke. Instead, it gave him a sense of completeness and a deeper understanding of himself, emotionally, biologically, and spiritually. Sean has been candid in interviews, stating he has 3 fathers, 1 biological and 2 who helped raise and shape him. He's expressed deep gratitude for each of them and the role they played in his life. His perspective is not only inclusive but also rooted in love and truth. This openness has helped him handle the public nature of his paternity story with surprising grace. He never let the controversy define him, instead, he allowed it to deepen his understanding of himself. For Patty Duke, the revelation of Sean's biological father wasn't just a matter of science, it forced her to confront years of personal history. It wasn't about a single DNA test but about decades of emotional upheaval, personal mistakes, and the overwhelming pressure of being a mother in the public eye. Patty had carried many secrets throughout her life, some imposed on her, others created in the chaos of her own struggles. Later diagnosed with bipolar disorder, she finally understood the root of her erratic behavior during the 1960s and 70s. She often acted impulsively, had difficulty trusting others, and was surrounded by people who didn't always have her best interests at heart. When she became pregnant in 1970, even she wasn't sure who the father was. Her involvement with Desi Arnaz Jr. was scandalous, not just because of the age difference, but also due to his fame and family legacy. Around the same time, she had a brief but legal marriage to Michael Tell, which she claimed was never consummated. She also had a close connection with Sean Astin. Paddy knew the confusion of that time made it impossible to be certain of the paternity. Instead of confronting that uncertainty, she made a choice and stuck to it. For most of Sean's life, that choice was Sean Astin. In many ways, he was truly a father to him. But when DNA proved otherwise, Paddy could no longer avoid the truth. Yet, her reaction surprised many. She maintained that her relationship with Michael Tell had not included intimacy and that he couldn't be the father. She told Sean, "I don't buy that test. I can support his truth as long as my truth, if not supported, is respected. I have told him I know what I know to be true. When God looks me in the eye and says, 'Anna Marie, you have been mistaken all these years,' then I will consider it." Even when faced with clear DNA evidence, she held onto her version of the truth, insisting that Sean Astin or Desi Arnaz Jr. was Sean's father. What stands out in this story, though, is that Sean didn't turn away from her. He didn't lash out or blame her. Instead, he showed compassion, understanding the mental health challenges and life pressures she had faced. He knew her love for him was never in question, even if some of her choices had been. Their relationship remained close and, in many ways, grew even more honest after the truth came out. She promised to support him in that new chapter, and he embraced her all the more. Sean later reflected on his relationship with his mother, saying, "It wasn't always pretty and it wasn't always fun, but there was a lot of love. Even through her divorce, her attempts with her life, and horrible things, there was never a moment of doubt that she loved me. We were all in it together. We were all in the storm together." After Paddy's death in 2016 due to sepsis, Sean created the Paddy Duke Mental Health Initiative to advocate for mental health support. He once said of her, "Above all, the way that I think of my mother, the thing that gives me such joy and reverence for her is that above all else, she was a warrior." His words show how deeply he loved and respected her, despite everything. Sean has often been asked how he coped emotionally with discovering the truth about his biological father after believing someone else had that role for so long. His answer reflects remarkable maturity. By the time the public learned the full story, he had already come to terms with it. While it might sound like a dramatic plot from a soap opera to have 3 potential fathers, it was simply his life. And over time, he not only accepted it, he embraced it. He's emphasized that fatherhood isn't defined by DNA alone. Yes, knowing the truth matters. But love, guidance, and presence matter just as much. He doesn't choose one father over the others. Instead, he honors each relationship for what it is. Sean Astin may not be his biological father, but he was the man who tucked him in at night, helped with homework, taught him discipline, and showed him how to be a good person. He was present for all the big moments and challenges. To Sean, John is and always will be Dad. He once said, "I want to honor my relationships with the people who looked after me, especially John, who gave a huge amount of his time, energy, and love." Sean's relationship with Desi Arnaz Jr. was never close, and over time, Desi faded from his life. Yet, Sean never speaks of him with bitterness. He recognizes that Desi was just a young man caught in a storm of Hollywood gossip in the 1970s. He doesn't harbor resentment. Instead, he sees that chapter as part of the winding road that ultimately led him to the truth. Finding out Michael was his biological father was life-changing, but it didn't shake the foundation of who Sean was. He met the revelation with the same calm and openness he applies to all parts of his life. He now speaks of Michael with appreciation. Their bond isn't flashy or intense, but it's marked by a quiet understanding. Sean has found peace with Michael's place in his story. In the end, Sean Astin's story isn't just about uncovering a biological truth, it's about redefining what family means. He was raised with love, sought answers, and when he found them, he didn't try to erase the past. Instead, he completed the picture. his journey shows that family isn't about clean definitions. It's about connection, choice, and the courage to embrace every piece of your story, even the complicated ones.